session is we've got a very interesting session with two amazing speakers. The session is entitled Thinking Globally, Acting Globally. Our first speaker is Mr. David Snead. He's an attorney at law and co-founder, Internet Infrastructure Coalition. Joining Mr. Snead is Aaron Phillips, the Chief Business Officer at cPanel. Now, to introduce Mr. Snead to you, he's an attorney in private practice in Washington, D.C. His practice focuses exclusively on representing companies and other entities active in the Internet infrastructure. In his 13 years in this area, Mr. Snead has represented these companies both in-house and as outside counsel. He has clients in the USA, Europe, India, and the former Soviet Union. He has broken down complex legal issues for Internet professionals at over 100 conferences. So we're very excited and privileged to have him here with us today. And to introduce you to Aaron Phillips, I'm going to use a bit of a metaphor. Now, I'm sure everyone knows Batman. So if David Snead is Batman, then Aaron Phillips is his trusty companion, Robin. So I'm going to let Aaron actually explain that a bit more to you when he comes on. But please put your hands together now to welcome David Snead and Aaron Phillips.
Hi, I thought we'd let Robin come on first before Batman. I think I left my cape someplace, my cape and my hat. I'm really excited to be here today, and I feel very privileged to be on the same stage with Aaron from cPanel. Let me tell you a little bit about what I'm doing here today, and then I'll let Aaron introduce himself as well. I'm really wearing two hats at this conference. The first hat, as the presenter introduced me, is I'm a lawyer, and I have been doing this work for a significant amount of time, and my practice really is only representing companies, people who are in this audience. And something that I'm very passionate about. Internet infrastructure issues are really what drives my professional life. The other hat that I'm wearing is as the co-founder and public policy chair of the Internet Infrastructure Coalition. And I'll tell you a little bit about what the I2 Coalition does, and Aaron and I are going to talk a little bit about that as well. The I2 Coalition is a global group of infrastructure providers, data centers, web hosts, registrars, registries, and we're very active around the world talking about public policy issues. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. I'm also going to talk to start out with about some legal issues. And so that's kind of generally my introduction to the talk today. Aaron?
Sure. My name is Aaron Phillips, and I'm with cPanel, WHMCS, as well as a board member on the Internet I2 Coalition. I'm here today to tell you about the I2 Coalition and why you guys should join. So that's my hat on the stage, and I look forward to pitching you guys in just a few minutes.
All right. So here's what we're going to talk about today. The first thing I want to do is raise your hand if you came to this talk for the free legal advice. All right. So we're going to the first 15 minutes of the talk today is I'm going to try and meet that expectation and give you some free legal advice, because why come to see a lawyer talk if you're not going to get free legal advice? As a lawyer, I have to give you two disclaimers for the free legal advice part. The first is you get what you pay for, and the second is I am not an Indian attorney, so I'm not going to be advising you on Indian law. What we're going to talk about to start out with is one law that you should know about for your business, one Indian law that you should know about for your business, that you should be prepared to explain to your partners outside of India and to people who you want to do business with outside of India. It's something that people are probably pretty aware of. Second thing we're going to talk about are 3 Indian government proposals that have the possibility of fundamentally altering the way the internet runs and the way your businesses run. From there, Erin and I are going to talk a little bit about how you can work with us to make sure that your voice is heard and so that you can lend your technical expertise to your government to help them make better decisions for your business. So that's the roadmap of what we're talking about today. We're going to save time for questions at the end. So if you see anything on my slides on our slides today, if you have any questions about, we're happy to take questions. All right. So let's talk for about 5 minutes about the Information Technology Act of 2000. And this is the free legal advice part of the talk. Raise your hand if you're familiar with this act. All right, so most of the audience is not familiar with this act. This act is a very broad Indian law that applies not only to the information technology sector, it applies across the board to any sort of information technology transaction as a whole. The reason that I'm talking about this law, and the reason I want to chat with you about this today, is there are 3 issues that you need to know about with regards to this law that you need to be able to explain. The first is the restriction on sending offensive messages. There are 2 issues with this provision of the law that you need to understand. There are ambiguities in this provision. The first is, what is the definition of sending? And the second is, what is an offensive message? The reason that I point this out is that I represent a number of clients, both in India and who are doing business in India, who will look at a law like this and they'll say, well, if I want to do business with an Indian company and I want to outsource some of my infrastructure to India, what does the word sending mean? You need to be able to tell me that if one of my customers sends a message using your infrastructure, I'm not going to be liable for it. The second is, you need to be able to explain what an offensive message is. What does offensive mean? Who is it offensive to? Is it offensive in general, or could it just be offensive to a member of parliament? The reason this is important is because around the world, most countries have laws that insulate internet infrastructure providers from liability. These are called conduit liability laws. What these laws say is that just like a telephone company isn't liable for what's said on the telephone lines, an infrastructure company isn't liable for what somebody does using their infrastructure. So your customers from outside of India are going to come to you and they're going to look at this law and they're going to say, well, if I outsource my email to you, or if I partner with you to be part of my email, how am I going to be liable? How are you going to help insulate me from liability for this? The second issue that you need to think about is the facilitation of cyber terrorism. There are 2 ambiguities in this law that you need to know about. First is, what does facilitation mean? This is really similar to sending offensive messages. Does this mean if I outsource part of my infrastructure to India and there's some transaction that goes through your networks, is that facilitation of cyber terrorism? The second is, what exactly is cyber terrorism? The third thing I want to talk to you about is you need to understand how copyright laws in India are going to impact transactions. You need to know how the copyright laws work, what procedures you are going to implement to deal with copyright issues, and how you're going to notify your customers. So those are the 3 issues that I want you to be aware of with this law. Interesting thing about this law is that ambiguities in this law are currently being resolved by the Indian Supreme Court. So there was a recent decision that was handed down around about 2 weeks ago that involved a Facebook post where 2 women were arrested for posting a protest about a shutdown in Mumbai for a funeral. And the Indian Supreme Court determined that it was an abuse of power under Section 66A for arresting these two women. The reason I bring this up is being able to influence how this law is interpreted within India is a great opportunity for people in this audience to be involved in changing or moving the direction of laws within India and helping your lawmakers understand the impact of what they're doing and helping them develop more technical literacy in what infrastructure issues have to bear. So, next thing I want to talk about are 3 issues that the Indian government is talking about, and they're talking about them internationally, and these fundamentally affect your business. The first issue is the Indian government is going to the International Telecommunications Union, to the United Nations, and other large governmental and overarching governmental entities, and they're trying to encourage businesses and they're trying to encourage governments to create ways of tracing communications through the internet. One of the things that I see quite often as part of my work with the I2 Coalition is that governments, and the Indian government is not alone in this, the US government does the same thing. They try to couch laws, try to couch proposals in security and stability, using security and stability. They say, well, all we're trying to do is ensure the security of our country. This is one of those proposals. It involves some very fundamental problems, fundamental infringements of rights to free speech, to communication, and those types of issues. The second 2 issues, though, are more important to people in this room. The first is a proposal to tie IP addresses to location. Why this is important is it would require, for example, a company in India who is trying to sell services to a customer in the US to get a US IP address in order to identify to tie that US person to the US, even though you might be providing services in India. I really, for the life of me, I cannot figure out how this would work technically. More importantly, it would make it almost impossible for people to sell internet services outside their own jurisdiction. The third proposal is even more fundamentally problematic. The proposal is to route all internal communications within a particular jurisdiction. So what this proposal would do, for example, is require that an email that was going from Mumbai to New Delhi to remain within India. The problem with this, and this is one of these issues that politicians, it sounds really good to politicians, but it doesn't work practically. As we all know, the internet is architected for security, it's architected for efficiency, and it's architected for resiliency. So when you send an email, the internet doesn't care where it's going, it's going to send it the most efficient way. The problem with proposals like this is it would require you to fundamentally change the way your businesses are architected, and I don't even know if a proposal like this would be technically feasible. So these proposals generally come up in internet forums and in government proposals as a way of ensuring safety and stability. As you can tell by this slide, I call these, will somebody think about the children proposals. What they don't do is they don't take into consideration how the internet is architected and how these things might affect your businesses. These proposals are coming about all over the world. So you have proposals, for example, from Russia. Russia has tried to censor blogs in the United States, claiming that the blogs facilitated terrorism. China. We all know about the Great Firewall of China. China actually has already taken this Indian proposal to route all domestic traffic domestically. When I talk about this proposal, the Chinese proposal, you can see when you look at infrastructure providers in China how uncompetitive Chinese infrastructure providers are, even versus Indian infrastructure providers. There are very few Chinese infrastructure providers who are able to market outside of China, and the reason for that is the Chinese government restricts their ability to innovate, to create new technical innovations. These proposals are not limited only to governments. You have the International Telecommunications Union. They are in the process of implementing technical regulations that really affect your business. And then everybody knows about the National Security Administration, the NSA, and how they're trying to access data. These are all issues that the Internet Infrastructure Coalition works on. These are all issues that you can be involved in, but policy issues aren't the only things that we work on. And I'll turn this over to Aaron to talk about some other things that are important to what we do.
Sure, thanks, David. This is on. So, how many of you get excited about these things? Yeah, cool. Yeah, nice. So I do too, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about why cPanel joined the I2 Coalition and some of our thought processes that we went about when we did this. I'm going to tell you how you can join, and then I'm going to allow you to tackle Dave when this thing's all over and get signed up. So cPanel joined the I2 Coalition about 3 years ago. And quite honestly, our original intention for joining was to be part of something new and get some branding behind it, and maybe meet a few cool people. What we found is that the Internet 2 Coalition, or the I2C, actually was fighting for causes that we really believed in, such as net neutrality, ECPA reform, and it started to expand globally. So for us, we originally joined for probably the wrong reasons, and today I'm part of the board, and we're floating around for more of the right reasons. As a company, why you should join the I2C is for a very low fee. How much, David?
How much would you pay?
How much would I pay? $10,000, David?
I don't know. Would you pay $10,000?
I'd pay $5,000. Would you pay $5,000, David? So me and Dave were joking earlier yesterday, and I thought I'd try to make this like as an as seen on TV commercial, but for the low price of $500. Is that right?
It's the price is based on your reported revenue.
So for around $500, based on whatever revenue you report to us, you can join the I2 Coalition and be part of this. But I want to talk about some really cool things that have nothing to do with good cause and why your company should join. These guys go to 37 trade shows. They went to 37 trade shows in 2014. So immediately for that low price, your branding could be across the globe. They do an annual event every year at Capitol Hill. And this brings together politicians and hosting providers and cloud hosting providers. We go to senators and congressmen's offices and tell them the issues that are important to us. But what's really cool is you get to meet other people just like us that are fighting for the same cause. And I've made some really good contacts and business partners that I never would have met. So finally joining is just the good cause part of it. So your money goes to fighting a good cause, supporting people like David, Christian, and the rest of us at keeping the internet safe, good, and on the right track.
All right. So let me tell you a little bit more about kind of what we do. The thing that I always want to point out in talks like this is the group is entirely nonprofit. So nobody's making any money off of this group. I'm here at this conference on my own time. No one, Aaron, me, any of the other members of the I2 Coalition, none of us are actually making a salary from our participation. It's entirely volunteer driven. We have a small staff, and the reason that we're in India is that we really believe the infrastructure providers in India have a real opportunity and a real expertise that your government needs. That there's a real opportunity for you to use a group like I2 Coalition to help your government understand how the internet works. This is a really great opportunity, not only in Indian political life, but on the world stage for you to be involved. So let me tell you about some things that we're involved in that really directly impact your business. We do a lot of work with WSIS and with some other international organizations where proposals like the ones that I was talking about from Russia and China are actually debated. These have very real impacts on your businesses. While I've been in India, I've been working on a brief that we're presenting to a U.S. court that's trying to limit the amount of access the U.S. government can have to data outside of the U.S. And why is that important? That's important to your customers because if you're using U.S. infrastructure providers, if you're putting your data on a data center in Dallas, your customers are going to want to know how much access the U.S. government might have to that data. We work on those things. To Aaron's point about marketing, what we do is we carry your brand forward in our marketing materials. Let me go forward a little bit. So this is our ShamWow, our presentation. How much would you pay? So the dues start out at $500 annually. That comes out to obviously $42 a month. Aaron's point about networking really resonates with me. This is an opportunity for you to work with companies like cPanel, like SoftLayer, like Rackspace, and with global companies like Reseller Club, who are all part of the I2 Coalition, and network with them and have your voice be part of a much larger grouping of people. Again, we do a lot of work outside of the U.S. In Europe, the reason we're in India is we're looking to determine whether there's enough interest in India for us to start moving forward with Indian policy issues. And here are the conferences that we've been to. I go to probably 15 conferences a year. The other co-founder goes to the other 15. He is very, very active at ICANN. So for those of you who are involved in the domain name industry, this is an opportunity for your voice to be heard in ICANN, particularly within the ISP constituency. We're very active in the IANA transition and getting our voice heard with the IANA transition. And as Aaron points out, your cost of branding is only $28 per show. That's a pretty low cost to be at that many shows. So this is the recap of what we're doing. Here are some of our members. And this type of graphic, this type of branding, we carry forward in all of our marketing material. You have the ability to be as active as you want to be. You also have the ability to just be part of, just have your branding be part. But if you look at this, you'll see there are brands here from around the world. We have Black Knight, that's they're in Ireland. UK2 is in the UK. ONAP's actually based in Gibraltar, but they're all from all over the place. So, how do you become a member? You can go to our website, i2coalition.com. If after this talk you're interested, you can just give me your card, and I'm happy to have our membership director talk to you. You can also send an email to our membership director, Hillary at i2coalition.com. So that's how you can become involved. Here is my contact information, but most importantly, at the bottom is the contact email for I2 Coalition in general, if you're interested in becoming a member, and I think we have time for questions.
Absolutely, we've got some time for questions, so is my mic on? Okay, all right, perfect. So we have some time for questions, so we have one question right over here. Yep, one right there, one there. So first here and then second.
Hi, thank you guys. My question is very simple. So you mentioned about telephone companies not having the liability of misuse of their network for something said over the phone. The same applying for email communication. Is that only for ISPs, or does that even further penetrate down to offices where the office network is used and as an origin point?
So your question is about conduit liability, and how far down does installation from conduit, does conduit liability go?
Yes, sir. And to be specific for India, if you could answer that, that would be very helpful.
Well, so I was just about to say I can't answer for India, unfortunately, because I'm not an Indian lawyer. My point about conduit liability, the reason I brought it up, is most countries most industrialized countries, the U.S., Canada, and most of the European Union, have conduit installation laws. The reason I bring that up is if you're trying to do business outside of India, you need to be prepared to explain, for example, to some of my clients how they're not going to be held liable in India if they're using your infrastructure. So I'd suggest that it would be good for you to determine whether there's a conduit law in India. But I'm happy to, if you'll stop me after my talk and give me your card, I'm happy to have someone look into that for you. Sure.
Thank you for your question. And next question, please.
Hello, sir. My question is that, is there any hurdle to get the fund transferred from US market, international market to our Indian account?
Is there a
Revenue generated with US company, US based company, that fund can be transferred to Indian account? Is there any hurdle or obstacle or any law is required?
Are you asking about, is there funds transfer problems?
From US market, where I am in an affiliate marketing business. So we generated revenue from the US based company. That fund can be transferred to Indian account, to our account. Is there any obstacle or hurdle?
So I know from working with Indian companies that there are some capital restrictions on exporting using funds in India to fund companies in the U.S. When you're thinking of, you're asking essentially a corporate structuring question. When you're thinking about starting businesses outside of India, one of the things you need to one of the people you need to talk to is your tax advisor to make sure that capital can be moved between subsidiaries or between companies in different countries. It's important to know, for example, that if you form a company in the U.S., the U.S. taxes worldwide income. So you want to make sure that if you start a company in the U.S., you do it in such a way that the U.S. government isn't going to try and tax all your income throughout the world. The other thing to think about when you're doing corporate structuring, particularly if you're doing corporate structuring involving U.S. companies, are immigration issues. If you are thinking about immigrating to the U.S., you need to structure the company much differently than you would if you were just starting a company. The same thing is true if you're considering just visiting the U.S. You have to structure the company a little bit differently so that you can get visas a little bit more easily. Capital and financial issues are something that you should talk to a tax advisor about, particularly in the U.S., Europe, and Canada. Most lawyers won't be able to advise you on tax issues.
Thank you for your question. We have time for one more quick question. All right.
Hi.
Hi, sorry, thanks.
I just wanted to ask if that Indian company is a hosting provider or a reseller. Should he have any disclaimer for all of his clients so that if someone misuses the infrastructure, any client, we have several clients hosting websites, emails and all. In case someone misuses the thing, and should we give a disclaimer kind of thing before signing up with any customer?
Sure.
And there is any standard format for that?
So I'll answer your question after I make this comment. Someone is asking a lawyer if you need a disclaimer. That's kind of like asking a kid if they want a candy bar. So to answer your question, should you have a disclaimer? Here's what I say. You need to have someone look at your terms of service. It's very, very difficult in most countries to just disclaim any responsibility. You need to have an acceptable use policy where you need to have terms of service that set out what kind of behavior you expect. So that kind of goes to my discussion about the Information Technology Act. You need to decide what an offensive message is, and then you need to say, here are the things that we don't permit on our network, here are the things that we do permit on our network, and then you need to take action to make sure that that you keep them off your network or that you enforce your contract terms. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hello.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can I ask one question?
Time's up. Let me just, I'm really sorry. Maybe we can...
You catch us afterward.
Yeah.
Afterwards and ask a question.
I'm not going anywhere, so you can catch me. But before we get the hook off the stage here, I do want to thank the people from Reseller Club who have very graciously given us the opportunity to talk about the I2 Coalition here. Reseller Club, the people from Reseller Club have been extremely supportive of what we're doing. And if you would all do me the favor of giving them a hand for their support.
And one more hand, ladies and gentlemen, for Batman and Robin, a.k.a. David and Aaron. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're very, very fortunate to have you here with us today. Thank you.